Hey, Net, new little video. This one is kind of a rant slash concept slash video response. I'll put a link down of the video that kind of brought me to this, but it's a good concept by Skinnymedic. He was talking that most likely what will kill people is sepsis. And he explains what it is and stuff, so I'll let you watch everything. But sepsis, basically, it's an overwhelming infection, and I agree with him. Where I kind of diverge a little bit is that, or if I would want to bring a little bit wider concept of that, and I think I mentioned in my response to this video, is that a lot of people that prepare for in the medical part of their preparedness, they go straight to suture. And I did a lot of videos on that and stuff and everything, and out of that, sepsis. And the other one too that they do a lot is the antibiotics. So fish antibiotic mostly. Here's where that concept that I kind of have a little bit of limitation, and there'll be two links down of great articles about that. First, I think the main one that we'll see is wound care, either by cutting yourself, and wound also meaning like rash or things like that, especially if you look at traina or whatever. You'll be in contact with dirty water or other substance that could, or burns because you have generators that you need to run and stuff. So I think wound will be a big part of this. And antibiotic, as if you look at things like cellulitis, which is basically an infection under the skin, has not a very good response to PO antibiotic. And what would cause sepsis is most likely a cellulitis that is not well controlled, and this is why when they come to the hospital we give them IV antibiotic. And even the ones that we send back home on pills, antibiotics, so PO antibiotic, is need at least a dose of IV antibiotic to bring them at a level. I did a video on that, which I won't go back, but I'll put a link down on my case against fish antibiotics. So I think wound care will be a big important part. But when you talk about wound care, two things most people go to: suture and gauze. And for those that follow my channel a lot knows that I'm against gauze, and actually I found a cool article while kind of researching to do this, that it dates like on where gauze comes in all its advantage. Well, not an advantage, but where it all come and why we're using that. And it's pretty discerning that it comes all the way up to the Egyptian time. And it has this limitation about why we're using it, because it's a kind of a one solution versus the 21st century dressing that I always recommend. You gotta you react. So as the wound change, so either more exudate, less exudate. If you need to, if it's dry, you wet it. If it's wet, you need to dry it. Then you can modify your dressing according to this if you have the 21st century dressings. So wound care would be a big one, and especially if you introduce now the silver dressings where it has no resistance and stuff. And there's a quote on another article that I have and I highlighted, is that at the end of his all history review of all the wars and everything, and actually was cool to read that, one of his conclusion is that as we advance, wound care will become more challenging because there's so much resistance to a lot of the antibiotics that we have. So therefore, having antibiotics and gauze as your first go-to will probably fail. Maybe a good backup, sure, but as your first go-to, not so good. So that's why I always recommend to go towards the 21st century dressing. But then again, you don't hear a lot about it, and you keep hearing about suture versus other solutions. The second one that I think sepsis would kind of bring is respiratory disease, and we talk about those, and those can be prevented very well if you do a lot of exercise and stuff. So pneumonia can be decreased if you're doing cough exercise, if you have a spirometer and stuff. But again, not a lot of people talk about it. They go straight to the pills, takes the pills and everything. But a lot of the things, and right now when you go, for example, so where we have like so there's different type of pneumonia. So there's ventilator acquired pneumonia, there's community acquired pneumonia, there's all kind of different type of pneumonia, hospital acquired pneumonia. And what we put that title is that, let's say 80% of the hospital acquired pneumonia are created by bacteria X, therefore it will react to antibiotics Y at this time. But we mentioned that, and actually there was I'll put a link on these cool articles that I read. They just found out some infection all the way up north, like in the Arctics, that comes from tropical. So there was, because our world's all traveling and everything, a disease that was all the way up down made it all the way up to the Arctic. Well, now imagine there was a disaster, everybody moving and changing, and not only human beings but animals and all these things. And we talk about it in the infectious disease, all that reservoir moving and changing. It will change the reservoir. Therefore, what these antibiotics, so for example right now the community acquired pneumonia are created, and most likely by this kind of bacteria, it will change, and maybe it will be a virus, maybe it will be something else, because also our habits will change. So now we'll probably stay more home, or we'll be out and living in tents or whatever disaster we'll have, and it will change how we're living and everything. Therefore disease will adapt. Just like we change, disease will also adapt with all that. And so therefore the antibiotics are good right now for the disease that we have, and most people, that's what they pile up of. Won't be a good defense. It's a little bit like be ready for a defense X, because you know that's the attack, but they change the attack. Well, if your defense is made for attack A, well, your defense won't work because the rules has changed. And this is why infectious disease, I think, will change. And the third one that I think will be a big one too, so respiratory disease will be probably, because we'll be more in closer communities. And so the third one will be disease from GI disease, so disease from the gut, so either diarrhea or things like that, because either poor water, poor sanitation, and all that good stuff that we'll be living, the kind of condition we'll be living in. And again, prevention is better for those, and also the reservoir now will be changed. So I did it's kind of a reiteration about this, but I think the best first step that we can take is learning more about, first, prevention, and second, instead of going straight to those fish and suture, how about we spend a little bit more time on wound care and learn about more wound care, so that the treatment that we'll be able to do will be more efficient, about more broad variety about what we have. In history, if you follow history from the wars and all this, it has shown us that it's that kind of trend that we'll see, because bacteria, just like us, will try to survive and they'll find a way. So that was kind of a video concept slash rant slash video response, whatever you want to call it, but this is what I wanted to reiterate again with a little bit more new data and research, is that when it comes to this sepsis concept, yes, it will be important, but the problem is a lot of the antibiotics that we have out there and that people stockpile in for fish, with the fish antibiotic, I think is not it's a good backup, but I wouldn't make it. It's a little bit like having a second blade good to have a backup blade, but I wouldn't make it my main blade. I think there's other steps you should take before going towards that route. Anyway, new concept, and I'll talk to you soon.